Okay, good. Good.
Okay.
Recording is on.
There we go. Now I hear it.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is the Walter Russell Secret of Light meeting group from Akashic Intelligence, the original AI, and from the Rogue River in Oregon. This group is meeting to discuss Walter Russell, The Secret of Light. We are now in part 2, chapter 5. And we're going to be, what we do is we go through the book and we take out questions that are statements by Walter, and we just repeat what he said, and we give the page number for the answers, and then we discuss what we think Walter's saying and how it affects us. Before we get started this week, though, I'd like to share this meeting that is being presented through the University of Science and Philosophy, which is the official Walter Russell site for his legacy. And every Thursday, every third Thursday of the month, there's a free Zoom meeting that they present where they discuss the Cosmic Messenger meetup. So they're going to be discussing Walter Russell topics. You can go onto the USP site and sign up, and you will get a link to share and to be part of that. Okay, can we have everybody mute unless they're going to talk? I'm getting some feedback.
Oh, okay.
All right, so yeah, there we go. Whoever that was just got it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start now with the meeting. And so here we are, Walter Russell, The Secret of Light. I am Will Harold, the Energy Hunter, and we do this almost every week, even though I will discuss now that probably next week, since it's Thanksgiving, we will not have a meeting next Wednesday. So everybody have a good week and have some good turkey and think about Walter. So what we're going to talk about this week is Walter Russell's, as I said, The Secret of Light, Part 2, Omnipotence, Chapter 5, This Sexed Electric Universe. Pretty racy this week, from page 118 to page 122. And what we're going to talk about is, this is a quote from the chapter, which says, "Each opposite becometh the other sequentially. For I say, in me is balance." And again, when we see the word me, that is not Walter Russell, that is Source talking. "In me is balance. I balance all opposites of pairs of things with equal opposites of pairs of things." And that is from Walter Russell, The Divine Iliad, which he wrote after having a download or awakening when he started his journey into his books and his cosmology. So let me read that one more time. "Each opposite becometh the other sequentially. For I say, in me is balance. I balance all opposites of pairs of things with equal opposites of pairs of things." Any comment on what Walter's saying there, or any comment, any insight? Be sure and unmute if you want to say something. Okay, so maybe I'll talk about it a bit. So as we've talked about, within Walter's cosmology, he has the one mind, which is the mind of God, which is the white light. And with it, from that one comes the two, which we often call the two sexed pairs, which is positive and negative. It can be called father, mother. It can be called male, female. It can be called sky, earth. So Walter calls them a lot of things, but from this two comes the polarity. And those always must be in balance. And if you go back to, I think it was last week, we talked a bit about balance and balance in the universe, and how these two imbalances are always seeking balance, but they'll never find it, because once they find balance, they go back to source and become the one. So as these two go forth from source, from the Father, from whatever you want to say, from God, they are constantly canceling each other out as they go forth in a forward motion. And if they went both, and they only go in one direction, even though there is bidirectional in them, we, within our minds as humans, can only perceive one direction. That's the forward direction. If we could see in both directions, we would see nothing because it'd be stillness. They'd be canceling each other out, forward and backward, and we would just be in the one, which Walter has said is formless. So if we didn't have this one directional sense and we saw both directions, we would see nothing. So as these pairs go out, they are both equal and opposite. So you can say positive, negative, or charge, discharge, but they cancel each other out. And but they are of equal. So it's kind of the law of, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, as you've heard in physics. Any more comments on that? All right, we'll move on to, these are the questions. So question 1, what are the attributes of the still magnetic light of the Father of all creation? And from page 118, it is one. The one light is the positive principle. It is cause. Now, when we see the word positive here, don't kind of get hung up on positive and negative as being good and bad or good and evil. That's not what we're talking about here. We're just saying it's a positive charge, okay? So it is the initial charge. And from that is going to be a discharge on the other side or negative. So just because we use positive and negative in certain terms within how we view reality, that's not what Russell's saying. Think of it as poles, just different poles with equal charges that are opposite, but equal. Not good, bad, or anything like that. So if we look at the slide here, you can see this is life, in the middle is neutral, and we have positive, positive, right? Blue, red, right? So red, what's red? Red is male. Blue is female. We have death is reset. So we have from this, and we have mind here. So here's mind coming in. Life gives there. So this drawing shows the method and process of interchange between the zero universe of mind and the multiple universe of motion. And we've talked about this as this single mind comes out as a positive from the Father. It is then broken up into multiplicities, which then give us our colors, our rainbows, our sounds, our gases, all the things that we perceive as matter or real in our world. So between the zero universe of mind and the multiple universe of motion, study all other drawings and relate them to these two. The more you comprehend them, the more we'll also comprehend that life is but fast motion and that death is a cessation of motion. So what Walter says is there is really no life and death. It's just what we perceive. So we perceive movement as life and stillness of death. But that is really just a perception of motion. It's not a perception of consciousness. Consciousness is always there. What we perceive as motion, and we take motion and stillness as life and death. But what Walter's saying, that is the illusion. So the division of sexless oneness into pairs could not be a part of nature's process without also dividing the oneness of light. God's magnetic light is white because it is still. It has no tension or strains in it, for it is not divided. It is invisible to the senses because it has no motion in it. The moment motion begins, the light of the Creator's energy is divided into pairs, which multiply their red and blue intensities into the ratios of their extensions from their cathode beginnings, just as electric potential multiplies its intensity for the same reason. So as we talked about, we have the one stillness of light. We can't see it. It's white light. It has no motion. As it proceeds from the Father, the positive, it comes into duality, positive, negative. As it becomes into positive, negative, we then begin to have that actually split up into the red and blue shift that we've talked about with my first diagram I did quite a while ago. We'll get back to that, probably not this time, but maybe later. And then that will then, through the human mind, through us, through what we perceive, then becomes matter. And that white light is what we call cause. And what we have at the end will be called effect. Any discussion on what I just spoke about?
Do we actually see it, or do our eyes create it? Didn't he say something like that once, or I'm crazy?
Well, no, what he's saying is that it's really, if you look at the idea of the cinematic projector, what's happening is it is coming forth and almost through us. And I don't know if our eyes see or not, because that's a question we've talked about before, where there are things of children that can read books blindfolded and people that
Yep.
can see things. So whether or not the eyes are really our sensing body, right? Our nerve, we call it the nervous system, right? The optical nerves or whatever. I don't know if it comes to the eyes or not. He never really says that it comes through the eyes, but it is what we see in the light in our eyes, and therefore we think it is coming through, through our eyes. So we sense it in our head. So, but what we see is the motion. We see the light. We see the shift. So we don't see the stillness. So we see that motion, and that motion then creates the waves, and the waves, just like just like when you look at a still pond, all you see is the surface, which is still. You don't see anything. But once you throw a pebble into that, you begin to see those ripples, right? Those ripples then are that sexed electric going through what we call the ether, to then go through red shift, blue shift, create color, create gases, create tones and notes. So that is the motion that we're then sensing, in which we pick up with our eyes, or with whatever senses we have, whatever electrical senses we have. Because once it leaves the father, it goes from magnetic to electric, right? And that's when our electric senses pick it up. So all of our nerves are basically an electric system. And through that is how we pick up this material world. So think about those waves in the pond coming forth, and then that's what we're picking up when we lose the stillness of the pond. Any questions or comments on what I just said? All right, let's go on to the next one. So if you see down here, it says visible incandescent pairs of male and female sex divided. So question 2, what are the attributes of the moving electric father-mother lights of all creation? Again, what are the attributes? Page 118, they are two. The two are opposite of each other. The two negate each other. They are the intercommunicating nerves of the universal body, like those of man's body, through which he senses things. They have not existence save an awareness of each other. They are but mirage extensions of mind imagining, which senses that which they but manifest. Their sole purpose is to oppose. Now, this is some pretty heady stuff here, right? So what we have, let's go back to, just the basics, right? We have the single, right, from the father, which is magnetic light, which is positive. Once they leave the father, they go and we get duality, we get positive, negative, which are opposites but equal. And they are intercommunicating like the nerves of the body. So when we think about the nerves of the body, if you look at really what modern medicine sees as nerves, it's really just electrical impulses, right? The synapses and all that. Walter Russell had stated earlier, I think in chapter 1 or 2 of part 1, that pain was just a overemphasis on a certain nerve system in which that nerve couldn't handle it, and that's what caused pain. So if you think about that still as this electrical impulses that run through our body. So they're like man's body through which he senses things. They have not existence. So again, they're not real. They don't exist. And that they are but a mirage. And that's what Walter talks about quite a bit, is that everything we see is just a mirage. It's not real. It's fleeting. It's we're making it. It's from us ourselves. It's from our consciousness. And as we imagine from the one mind, we're actually throwing up on a screen. When I say throw up, we're actually creating on a screen, just as this is in cinematography, an image. And that image we view as real, but it is really nothing more than a movie projection. And their sole purpose is to oppose each other. So from these two, they oppose, which creates tension. Within that tension, breaks the stillness, and now we can see and experience. We don't experience the stillness. That's why when we go inside meditation, we kind of lose, our bodies, right? This is like in Buddhism where you kind of go into stillness and meditation, you lose sensing. So as we go into stillness, we lose electric sensation. And we don't have the wave, we don't have the polarities. As you can see here, we have this diagram. Nature arranges her sex divisions in unit pairs in such a manner that the opposite sex can unite as one. Neither will not allow man to reverse his order by turning one unit of the electric current or wave around to make sex unity impossible. So we constantly have the wave going here, as we see. So we go from father to the apex, all the way over to mother, and then back to father, and so on. So we have these constant shifting of the poles of the father, mother, and positive, negative. And that tension is what creates movement. And through that movement, we create waves, and the waves create the vibrations that then create sound, that then create color, that then create gases and the table of elements, basically. Any comments or questions on what we just shared in this?
What's the point on the second row, or the second one, where the blue is going to blue, jumping over the blue that's next to it now? Why did he change that one?
I have no idea. The only thing, why would you think?
Maybe it was never mind. I don't know. I held it back.
William,
Yes.
during this presentation, I'm not seeing you. Is that what you intended?
I think that when I share, I only share my screen. I don't share myself.
That's what it looks like.
Well, it's okay. It's just that it's harder to follow if I'm not seeing you, but that's okay. Just saying, you're talking behind. It's just, I don't know why, but anyway, just mentioning. Okay, it's that tool, I guess.
How about now? Can you see me now?
Yeah, we see you at the bottom. Thank God.
There you go.
Well, now you're in the corner.
Because, just looking at this, it's like you're listening to you in the background. It's just not the same. Sorry.
Okay. Well, there you go. We've now fixed it.
It's good. We see you. Okay, good.
We're not seeing the other stuff. What about us? Aren't we also part of the cinema?
I see you guys. Yeah.
Doug, I think I can't really see anyone, but I'm listening.
Yeah, we can't see you either.
But yeah, no, I turned off my video. I think
okay.
I think it's my just trying to increase the bandwidth to make everything work okay. But I think to your question, I think all of those rows in there are illustrations of maybe not all of them. So, some of them are illustrations of violations of the principle. So the blue, red, blue, that's what you were talking about, right? That's he's showing how it doesn't work. And then I think in the D, it's every other one. And then D is showing how the violation of the spin of whatever that is creating a problem. And then the last one is the wave. So I think the first A, C, and E are the how it should work, and B, D, and F show the violation.
Yeah, and he has that noted here, right down here: violation of sex division in the wave. We have mother here.
Well, that's the only place he has it, though. But
But-
that's logical still.
And didn't we talk about this? Was it last week or the week before? We talked about the hurricanes and the storms of when we had the violation of these principles. That's what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly. Thank you. Good answer. I mean, it works.
Thank you, Jeremy.
How come they're both showing, though? If you look up on top, the two blues are the arrows. What is C? Oh, those are the graphs or the next one. Never mind.
Okay. Any more comments on question 2? Let's go to question 3. How do repetitions and balance come? Each sex condition gives unbalance to the other to separate each from each to increase the power of each to oppose each. Each then gives of itself to the other to void the imbalanced condition of each other. In order to effect balance in each must become the other. The charging one must discharge, and the discharge one must charge. So how do repetition and balance come? So as we talked about earlier, as they go in from the 1 to the 2, that they're there to oppose each other, but they're in balance. So they, as one charges, the other just charges, and they go into balance, and they go. And so God's universe of space is an intensely luminous, blinding white light which no eyes can see, right? And why can't we see it? Because it's still. That's what we heard earlier. And then we have the white mind light divided into spectrum pairs, right? So God's white mind light is dark to man until he divides it into spectrum pairs of red and blue lights. This is the redshift blue shift we've always talked about. To screen the white light of God's mind, which centers every creating thing. And then man's senses are two-way waves of limited frequency. They do not respond to vibrations below or above a very limited range. So if you see, the circle here, we're in a very narrow band. So there could be all kinds of other things going on around us. Images and things that if you want to talk about, aliens or phase shift or whatever, there could be all kinds of things happening in our world around us that we're not seeing because we're limited to a very narrow range. But what we see, we think it's all. Within scientist materialism, this is all there is. But this is only what we can, what we can see now. The scientists can begin to take in, they can calibrate their instruments a little bit higher and pick up like what dogs can hear, maybe, or these other sounds. But they can't. They're still probably only like within this much of a range, right? There's still all this out there that they can't calibrate to because their instruments can't do it. We're just not at that point. Maybe they are. They're just not telling us. Who knows? But as far as we know, they're not telling us, right?
Well, there's that whole thing.
What?
There's that whole thing with the I can't remember the guy. The book Giselle. Maybe you remember the name. And he saw all these other creatures in infrared.
Mm-hmm.
He made a whole book about it, that they're living right beside us, but you can't see it unless you use these glasses. He actually had glasses like this freaking movie.
There's the book.
Yeah.
Cosmic something, yeah.
Pulse of light.
Thank you.
So what so this is why Walter Russell's saying, it's really, what we think is our world is actually larger and it's fleeting and it's really an illusion. And we fool ourselves into thinking that we know so much. So man can extend his range of senses visions by telescopes or microscopes, but his senses cannot go beyond spectrum effect into mind cause. So, we can do things to supplement our vision and so on, but we still can't get to mind. We're still only dealing with the electric effect. To get to the magnetic effect, we have to go to mind, right? The stillness. So we can do all these things. So man's limited sense vision has caused him to see an object universe of many separate disunited things. When mind vision unfolds to a higher stage in the human race by increasing awareness of the inner's man, he will then see that everything in the universe is insolubly bound to every other thing. Science will then know that matter is but many focal points of one body. So as we see these kind of pictures, as we begin to unfold, as we begin to become aware, we will begin to see the law of one, right? The oneness of all things. And we will begin to see that we are all connected and we are not separate. Even though we may have separate identities, we may have separate frequencies, we are all united. And then when a man multiplies gravity by casting a stone in the water, his senses see only wave ripples. They do not tell him that those ripples are equatorial ring series of expanding spheres which are dissipating gravity in the same ratio as it is being multiplied by the falling stone. The same principle applies to all action. This is, in fact, this is the very basis of the universal life principle. So science has built a strange universe from sense evidence and has been mightily deceived. So what this is saying, is that when we rely on science, scientific materialism, we're relying on senses that actually don't even give us the appropriate picture. And we try to make facts and discern our world from a false reality to begin with. So the reality we create from false data creates an even larger false reality. Any questions on that or comments?
I think about how much effort it is to maintain all of these different faceted views of the same thing. Like you've got all of these independent constructs trying to visualize something that is all one, but we have to learn all of these different laws, and no wonder science is so impenetrable and complex and leads people down areas of specialization.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it that those CERN buildings is like 144,000 of them? They're all projectors of our world.
And that was funny because I was talking to someone this week, and they were talking about how the more they learn, like the more laws that are put on them, and the more constraints. And I was listening, I think maybe it was Gigi or somebody was talking about that. The more laws that are put on you, the more constraints, the lower your vibration goes and the deeper in matter you go. So let's go ahead and start. What is the electric universe? From page 119, it is a negative principle. It is a fact. Now for this one, it was kind of hard to actually think of what kind of diagram to show, but what I'm showing here is really what Walter Russell says is matter. It is the sphere encompassed by the cube. If you guys remember in my diagrams where I show the red ball in the cube. So this is the effect. So this is what matter is. So we have cause, which is still magnetic light of mind, which goes through a process of redshift, blue shift, polarity, so on and so forth, and then solidifies what we think is solid anyway within matter. So this is God's end of the cosmic bridge where motion begins its projection into space to simulate mind idea. So matter begins by division of stillness, as we talked about, right? The one magnetic light in the inert gases and is projected by two-way motion, what's a two-way motion, right? Positive, negative, father, mother, into pairs of octave waves, tones, which we call elements. The principle of projection is the same that man uses in projecting the concept of his ideas into the moving form of the idea. It is the dual radar principle of nature reduced to its ultimate simplicity. Nature's is a series of echoes. So when we're talking about echoes, right, we're talking about how, and I'm going to put myself back here to make Cell happy. Hopefully they see me again. Here I am. So that as we have this constant echoing, right, so we have the negative go out, right, it then hits, and then the positive, and we have the positive go out, hits the negative, echoes back. So we have this constant echoing, right, of the positive and negative, the interaction, the wave. So we're actually kind of seeing, instead of like this, right, we're seeing the positive come in, right, turn into the negative, echo back. So it's a constant, he's calling it like an echo. And this diagram here, right, so this is the 8 corner projectors of the Universal Radar broadcasting station. So we talk about these planes here, and then we have the sphere. So this is the advanced concepts that we get to, that we talked about in the very beginning. Now we're kind of drilling down into really what we were talking about, what we were seeing in that white light that we talked about. I mean, in the physical that we talked about. Any comments on that?
Have you seen the cube? Have you seen the cube that they have?
Yeah, and basically that's what this is. Is these mirrors, and they have a corner cut out that you look into.
Amazing.
And that's the multiplicity of the effect of what we're seeing here in that cube that you're talking about, Doug.
It's amazing looking into it. It's just amazing.
At the bottom, you mentioned inert gases. I know we haven't gotten to that in the book, but so it's the first time I saw, because I remember Dr. Lando saying, you know, inert gases is these gases, it's so important. We just don't know, you know. What I did is I read the introduction to the book again, and it's mentioned in there in the intro. Once in a while, I read the intro again of what he said we're going to learn. And I guess he kept saying, he says that until we understand what those inert gases are for. So I'm sure you know more about it than we do, William, by now.
I wouldn't put any amount of money on that wager.
Well, I'm just asking because I really don't, but anyway.
Very simple stuff.
It's coming to it, I guess. Just that I guess that sentence at the bottom puts all of it together.
Yeah, well, and again, you know, when you look at the diagrams that we've looked at, where we saw like the tones and the gases and the colors that all had correspondence.
Oh yeah.
The inert gases would be the base of where all things begin their vibrationary journey, if you want to say that, right? So they're the building blocks, kind of like tissue salts, right, within our body. That those are the base building blocks, and from there, all other things are built from. So the inert gases would be the base level where all things start.
I like we're on question 4 or whatever.
Yeah.
It talks about the negative principle, because we saw at the beginning the positive principle was
correct.
The one
was cause.
And cause. And now this is the effect.
Which is negative.
Yeah.
And again, you know, like I said, I think Leo got kind of caught up in the definition of positive and negative in more of a psychological sense than a true charge discharge sense. So when we're saying negative, we don't mean that when you're in matter, you know, it's evil or bad. That's not what we're saying. It's just an opposite of the positive charge of the stillness of magnetic.
The evil is just a bonus.
For some people who wear black. Which both of us do.
It's fine to wear black. You know who was wearing black? I just got this video sent to me. I can't remember from whom. From Gigi Young. She just did a lecture on.
Yeah, I did. I sent it to you.
Yeah, well, she's all wearing black.
Yeah.
And I have, like I said, she's the most animated, positive person that I've ever saw. I mean, lately. So it doesn't really matter. It doesn't seem to phase her out that she's wearing black.
I was a joke, Giselle. I was just joking.
I know it's a joke, but I just meant, because Doug brought it up before. Don't wear black or whatever.
I always wear black.
Well,
So
okay, whatever.
that's why, and I'm Taurus rising. So this last couple of weeks have not been fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And within Gigi's, video, she was basically talking the same stuff that we're talking about today about father, mother, about positive, negative, about into matter. So, and it made a lot of sense. So that was, now here we are in question 5.
Mhm.
How does Russell define sex? So now we're getting racy. From page 119, the division of a balanced equilibrium condition into 2 equally unbalanced conditions, which negate each other periodically for the purpose of repeating the 2 unbalanced conditions. It is not a thing, it is a condition of a thing that is a creative principle. So, as we look at this, how is matter born, right? And we see that the man is red and the woman is blue. And I really think that this is correct, red and blue, correct. So, and then they come together here at the stillness and the waves coming in here, right? Forming this, and a spark occurs. So nature creates sex conditioned bodies by polarizing an equilibrium condition. Nature destroys bodies by depolarizing them. Nature repeats bodies through interchange between their opposite conditions. All bodies are eternally repeated. So as we have this sex condition, what he's saying is it is not a thing, it is a condition. And it's being created by 2 equally unbalanced conditions. And we're going to talk about that, I think, next, right here. I come back to the lever, right? Equally unbalanced, right? These distances are equal, but they're not balanced. Correct?
Yeah.
It's the charge that's creating the imbalance, the motion within the lever, right? We've talked about that a few times. I just brought it back in. So is a sex condition balanced or unbalanced, right? A sex condition is an unbalanced condition. Because what would we have at this point right here in the fulcrum, right? In this point, we just have center. We have no movement. Once it becomes a sex condition, see, there's no charge in any of this, right? There's no negative or positive put in this diagram here. Once we put in the charge, we get the unbalanced. We now have the sex condition. We now have motion. We now have the electric universe. Any comments or questions on that?
Well, it's well thought of, eh?
Mm-hmm.
I like what you had on the previous slide.
You like the colors.
Well, I do, but I like the word equilibrium.
Mm-hmm.
A balanced equilibrium. Because very soon we're going to talk about the violent aspect. So I'm just saying, I just think it's,
What's interesting for me is like nature repeats bodies through interchange between all bodies are eternally repeated. Why would you repeat something that's unbalanced?
Because the world is created as imbalance. We return to source, to balance. If we were all unbalanced, if we were all balanced, we'd all be back to mind and there'd be no creation.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, so like that kind of makes me think about like Christ's message and all that stuff is being able to contain and hold the 2 opposites.
Correct.
And still remain centered. So that's kind of like why we're here, right?
Correct. And I think that if we actually realized our purpose, that we are here for the Father, for the mind, for the one, for source. And I think this may be where some of the teachings of the church went far, where they said that matter was evil and all this, when you fell into matter and that's all. That's really our purpose here, to be in matter, to actually explore this condition and create, because this is an area where we can create. That's what all this is. This is a great big laboratory for creation.
Well, our mind has we've evolved over these 2,000 years or whatever, that now we can manifest better, right? We've reached that point where we can use our mind, learn that our mind can be a receiver of higher impressions, basically. That is something people are not realizing yet.
I think we went backwards. I don't agree. I think we've gone down, not up.
Well, again, there's been worse times in our past. I mean, I think that we've had, we're not having wars now. They're now putting, they're trying to do things through biological means, not through physical means. We haven't dropped an A-bomb in a long time. So things may be getting better. But as we look at the world, and this is some of the things we talked about last week, had the discussion of what is evil, right? What is power? Those kind of things. And, we were talking about how oftentimes in today's world, we want to blame others, right? We want to say, oh, it's their fault, their fault, their fault, when really all the power lies within us to manifest. And everything that we see right now is a manifestation of the whole, of the human race, of actually all spiritual beings and entities and bodies. Because we are all back to back to this one right here, once we see that we are all connected, right? And we're all working together to manifest this reality. That it's not, it's not just some that are creating evil. I mean, all this is coming from us, right? We have the ability to change our manifestations.
That picture there, the one that you showed where there's all these connections with all the bodies there. Yeah, like every action we do with people, with everything, there's it's like a thread that goes out there. So once we start observing what we're doing, and then we either get burned or we get a good reaction, bad reaction, whatever. When we do a better, if you like, a higher way, like we think a little bit, okay, well, maybe next time I'll react this way, or if you're very still, then you won't create these extensions that will create karma, if you like.
Well, won't we create the waves, right? That are going to have, which are going to come back at some time, right?
Oh, it will. It will. I mean,
because
what it gets today will be, later you're going to cry,
Because here we're being told that that they have an echo, right? Yeah. Whatever we send out is going to echo back. That's what Walter's saying. And so some of this that we're getting back right now is an echo of what we've done in the past, correct? And we're experiencing that now. And, even Gigi talks about that. That's not only people, but it's planets, it's all things, all sentient beings. And we've, within scientific materialism, we don't recognize sentient beings, right? We don't even really recognize ourselves as sentient beings. We recognize ourselves as animals within scientific materialism. And that's what I think Rupert Sheldrake calls the hard problem or something, that scientific materialism can't explain consciousness.
That's why I said we're going backwards.
And then we can't recognize consciousness in other bodies, planetary bodies and plants and animals. We can't recognize any of that. And so, that's what Russell says. Once we begin to see all that as being connected, and how are they connected? They're connected by consciousness, right? That's really, what are these connections? These connections are consciousness. That's what the connection is. It's the nerve system here.
We're like a microcosm of the universe.
Well, and we're just a part of it. I mean, we are just one part of that macrocosm, and we all interrelate. And what we do, as above, so below. This is Hermeticism, correct?
Yep.
As above, so what we feel. I mean, even Jesus said it. What you loose on heaven will be loosed on earth, and what is loosed on earth will be loosed in heaven. there is a there is a reciprocal action. That's just as it talks about here, this echo. And so the more that we are in conflict, the more that we see conflict, the more that we see the us and them. Is that a reality? Is there an us and them if we are all one?
Well, especially, it says right there, each must become the other. I mean, people don't understand that whatever's happening that they see, well, I could be the one doing that too. Like, it's kind of like, yeah, it's difficult for sure. But I think when you have a heart opening, you can be more, I don't know. You can use both the heart and the mind better,
Yeah, and it could be that, we see them as different. We can say they are us. They just think differently than I think, or they sense, or they realized it. But they are me, right? They are an extension of me in some way or other. All people I see are an extension of me in some way or the other. So we talked a little bit about this, and I don't want to go through the lever again. We went through that, I think, twice already, but it just really shows the idea of the two-sex condition, that once it gets polarity, it becomes unbalanced, which creates the tension, which creates matter. Any more questions or comments on the unbalanced condition, which creates matter?
How does it tie into like the fall of man?
Well, again, the fall of man, and again, so the fall of man was man falling from spiritual states into matter. Okay, that's really what
that's how the Bible portrayed it, but we have like lots of evidence that we've recycled we've had like enlightened civilizations and then they've fallen,
But they didn't change density. See, I mean, the fall is not really about consciousness or enlightenment, it's about the density of man. And so if you listen to like Gigi or Casey or some of those people, they'll talk about that, and again, I'm just talking about what I've read. I haven't really experienced this either in intuition or anything. It's just what I've been told and listened to, is that during Lemurian times, which were the very far back times, and Steiner talks about this also, is that our bodies were more jelly-like. Okay, we didn't have bones, we didn't have cartilage. We had a little bit of cartilage, but we were more like a jellyfish in our bodies. Now, we thought we were solid, okay, but we really weren't. And as each progression, and this is what Doug's talked about too, as we go into this new earth and the changing of the earth and so on and so forth. And if you listen to that last talk by Gigi, she goes kind of into this she talks about as we go through the spheres, our incarnation through the spheres. What is the first law of nature, right? It's the law of evolution, right? The law of evolution is what they talk about, right? So we're constantly evolving. So this fall into matter was this fall into density, not consciousness, not enlightenment, not knowledge. So as our body fell, we became denser and denser. As we became denser and denser, we began to rely more heavily on the sensing body, because we lost we lost touch with the higher bodies, right? With the etheric, the astral, where, as I said, in the past, cultures often thought of the dream state as reality and the physical state as the dream, because it's really a matter of which body you're in and what reality are you experiencing, right? If you're experiencing the astral plane more than you are the physical plane, the astral plane will become more real than the physical plane. But as your body falls into matter, as it begins to fall into these different levels, and this is where, within the Steiner cosmology, where they talk about Ahriman, the difference between Ahriman and Lucifer, okay? So Lucifer is saying, you guys don't want to be matter. This is kind of the teaching of the church with the original sin. The body's dirty. You don't want to be there. You want to be up here in the spiritual realms, right? You don't want anything to do with this. Come away with us to the spiritual realms, get out of body. To where Ahriman is saying, no, you don't want to be in the spiritual realms. You want to be down here in matter with me. So this is this tension between, I want to be more spiritual, Luciferic, or I want to be more in matter, Ahrimanic. And so that's the fall that we're going through, is that we're falling deeper and deeper into matter, becoming more and more dense. So if you were to listen to Steiner or Jung or some of these other people, when I talk about Jung, I'm talking about Gigi Jung, then you would begin to see that our makeup now is denser than, say, even our parents, or even 100, 200 years ago. They would say that we're actually denser now, that our bones are more calcified. And we actually see that, and because some people are trying to make us more calcified and more dense with the food that we eat and things like that. So as we eat more meats, as we eat heavier foods and less plants, we are going to become more calcified. That's how I understand it.
And the
From the Mayan cosmology
Mhm.
perspective, they talk about the Hunab Ku, which is like the galactic center.
Mhm.
And our part of the solar system got cut off because of the, well, long story short, the fallen lords of light kind of cut us off from the super light, or the galactic center. So we're kind of at the entropy of our own solar logos, our own sun, and because that's on its own cycle and it's running out of gas, so to speak, that's why we keep having these like rises and falls, and it's based on like the sun's
Again, I think you have to separate rises and falls in,
with good or bad. I'm not saying,
well, no, with epochs and rises and falls with the body. Okay, so as we fall into matter, that has something to do with our own physical makeup. It doesn't have to do with the epochs, to say. Okay, epochs and culture will rise and fall on their own, but the fall into matter, which is the question you ask, is a different subject than rise and falls of empires. But as we rise and fall in body, our senses, okay, how we perceive the world will change. The deeper we become rooted in matter, the deeper we will rely on our sensing bodies. So that's the fall into matter. These, to say that, a Mayan culture was a higher culture because it had more technology than, say, a very simple culture that is all natural, that is relying on the earth. I don't know if that's any higher culture or not, because where's the happiness? Where's the humanity of the cultures? Just to say that, and that's where we get rooted in like scientific materialism, is that we begin to say, oh, well, a culture is the success of a culture, or the height of a culture, is based on its use of technology. And I don't know if that is true, So I don't know if, when you look at these things, if we look at the Lemurian or the Atlantean, it would seem like the higher the Atlanteans got in their technological advancement, the closer they came to destruction of the race. And I don't know if that's because, that as they became more aware of their power, of the shortcuts they could take by manifesting power through technology rather than through inner work, they became, I don't know. But again, I don't think that's the fall of man. I don't think that's the fall of man. I think those are two distinct, different things. Any more questions? All right. So what does the unbalanced atmosphere violently seek? Again, we have the word violently now, right? It violently seeks a balanced condition, depending upon the intensity of the unbalanced condition. An unbalanced sex condition in man demands balancing in the same way. So something just came to my mind as I was reading this and thinking about what Grant had talked about. The other thing that's talked about within these Lemurian and actually the Atlantean, again, if that's true, it's one cosmology, but it's within our circles that we run, those are the kind of the veins that we run in. So within the Steiner and within the even the Edgar Cayce readings, and within what Jung talks about, Gigi Jung talks about, the Lemurians were hermaphrodites. They were not sexed. And so there was a much different culture then. And within the Atlantean age is when we actually began this two divided light thing. And with the Divine Trinity and with male and female as opposites in body. There was male and female within one body during those first evolutions of man. And then that separated out into the two. And then that's where we get the whole idea of the Garden of Eden and things within that separation. So what we're seeing here now is that when we see two bodies within, say, this picture, this may have not have been the way it always was. And as I think Doug has talked about, we are going to probably go back to one body. We will probably not have the two sex lights in separate bodies, but they will be in one body within the new earth. So what does the unbalanced atmosphere violently seek? It seeks a balanced condition depending upon the intensity of the unbalanced condition. An unbalanced sex condition in man demands balancing in the same way. As we see here, we have male and female. They put different sides. Sometimes they're over here, but again, male is red, female's blue, right? Here they're showing both being positive, plus, plus. In the middle is a still white light. This is what we call the Divine Trinity, these three, male, female, and the one. So this illustrates the entire process of creating and recreating matter. The father-mother electrically divides his oneness into pairs of father and mother bodies. The electrical strain of separation is equaled by an opposite strain or tension of desire. Remember we talked about desire last week, of oneness. Unity thus attained is repeated in similar electrically dividing and uniting pulsations forever. Another way of stating the same thing, God, the Creator, divides his one white light by extending its oneness into electrical tension of vibrating red and blue pairs. This is the redshift, blue shift we talked about. The tension of the electrical divisions are equaled by a desire for unity, which is attained at the point of white incandescence in matter. Unity thus attained is repeated forever by the same dividing, uniting process of electrical action, reaction, pulsation. Reproduction cannot take place until the red and the blue lights of sex-divided motion are voided in the still white light of the Creator. Man alone of all creations ever knows of his omniscience. Right? Omniscience is his all-knowing. So what Russell's saying is that man is the only creation that is actually knows of his omniscience, that knows of his. So, you know, even in the Bible, it says the angels look at us and wonder, right? And wonder why we are who we are. And they probably even wonder why we don't understand how powerful we are and how we're always looking to other things. But so within this unbalanced condition, the intensity of the unbalanced condition can vary, and the more it varies, the more violently it will seek this balance. But we know that we never do achieve it. We achieve it during creation, right? That's when creation occurs. So maybe this is, I don't know. I mean, it may occur when we have a fertilized egg or during sex or whatever. I don't know if that's what he's talking about here. But we do have a lot of correlations. And this is a question I actually asked Baird, and he didn't think it was, but looking back, because within orgone energy, the orgone that's done by Reich, the word orgone comes from orgasm.
Yeah, that's what he was about.
Yeah,
he was about orgasms.
Yeah, he studied with Freud.
Really?
He Jung and Freud were all together. Carl Jung and Freud were all together.
I thought Freud was a bad guy. Again,
the bad and the good. I know you're a jet. I get but Freud was basically based on sex. He believed all things came from a sexed condition and a sex inability to deal with sexual desires. That's kind of where Freud was coming from. He kind of looked at all of our psychological issues as coming from that. That's why Jung broke off. Carl Jung didn't agree with that.
All right. Good.
But Reich saw it, and he saw it as energy, not so much as
So cool.
like psychological disorder, right? So what Reich's kind of looking at is saying it's our inability to handle the energy that's being generated by this sex, by this orgasm, by this unbalance, right? This imbalance is an energy imbalance. It's a polarity imbalance, right? We're seeing that here. That's what Walter Russell was talking about.
That's why they killed him too.
Killed Russell?
Reich. They killed
Yeah.
Reich as soon as
Yeah.
they arrested him and killed him.
Yeah. But the idea that Reich is having, the concept he's having, is that it's a matter of energy, not of emotion.
Well, he
Right.
caught on to that something's going on here, and that he figured it out, and they knew that.
And
That's my opinion, anyway.
Yeah. And so but where Reich is going with it is that our inability to discern and handle this imbalance of energies causes the trauma.
No training,
right?
First.
Yeah, and so that when we do the orgone and things, it actually helps us bring into balance the polarities, and therefore the orgonite, the orgone in the healing boxes and things like that, will actually help us take that energy and balance the violence, right, which is the trauma in the energy fields that surround us.
Very cool.
Wow, that sounds so encouraging, eh?
Well, and again, I think they say sometimes you take things too personally or whatever, and once we can actually separate ourselves a little bit, maybe from the trauma, from personal trauma, and I don't want to demean anybody who's had personal trauma and say that I'm taking it lightly. That's not what I want to say. But as we can begin to depersonalize it a little bit, maybe, and see it as energies, and that there is this unbalanced condition, and that's what caused the trauma, right? One person was exerting a force unbalanced on somebody else, right? That's where a lot of this trauma comes from, right? Yeah. You have a child and somebody who might be taking advantage. So you have a higher force that becomes unbalanced. So in this unbalance, we get this condition, right? This trauma. And it's an energy imbalance is really what it is. And so through orgonite, go ahead, Grant. I can't hear you. Are you muted?
I wanted you to finish your thought. That's why I didn't want to interrupt.
Okay. But so maybe and again, I'm just speaking here. Okay. I'm just speaking. I haven't read this anywhere. Okay. I'm just speaking here. This is totally a gospel of will. Okay. But as we begin to see this as energy rather than as trauma and emotionally based, maybe we can actually heal things in a different manner.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you guys ever listened to that Leonard Jacobson guy that I posted a couple times ago or a couple weeks ago, but that dude really, I think like you got to get through you got to understand his philosophy, but what he's talking about is we personalize things because we identify with the story, and our ego tells us the story.
You just froze. Go ahead. Sorry, you froze up.
Basically, like we have these egos and these stories that we tell ourselves, and this personal story is something that we take very seriously. Mm-hmm. And the ego does not want to let go of its story. Mm-hmm. That's all it knows. So when we kind of personalize life, like Will's talking about, whether it be trauma, your negatives, your positives, whatever's happening to your life, really shoot ourselves in the foot because we limit our potential to that little story when we're this like infinite consciousness.
So well, no, you believe you're the body. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
You believe you're the body. I mean, that's
so your power is limited based on that conceptual understanding of you're this little node in this big, huge universe. But really, you are the universe. You know?
Right. When people believe they're the body, though, is what you're seeing around the country. They brainwashed the whole country, the whole world.
Mhm.
Oh, literally, they really did. I mean, they're doing exactly what we're talking about.
Mhm.
People that believe they are the body, they trust their mind, what it says, and voila, you got world takeover.
Mhm. And so, maybe as we move into this new era of Aquarius, right?
Right.
Which is really
Physical
the
world.
air, and which could be maybe seen as energy, even ether and so on, right? Rather than some of these other ideas of Pisces, which is water, which I think in tarot is actually feeling, right? I think when you look at like the cups and things in tarot, that's actually the feelings. So water, because water, what does water do, right? You can impregnate water or imprint water, right? Which is pretty much feelings, right? So we're saying if we can get away maybe from the imprinting, right, of the water and look really at these things as being energy and energetic and actually, approach healing that way, we may actually move into a new era of healing.
Well, I think there's a reset coming.
I got
I'm
another
serious,
Steiner
though.
quote
I
for
really
you.
do.
Okay, go ahead, Grant.
Steiner says something about anything that constricts or restricts you, by definition, it's Luciferian. I just wanted to add on to what Doug was saying about the reset and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's really the laws, right, that we talked about, that as we restriction on these laws. The more laws you have on yourself, the more you think you can't, the lower vibration you're in and the less spiritual you are. So let's go on to question number 8.
That's a good one.
How is the sex condition recharged in man? By his heartbeat, by the food he eats, and by his in-breathing and out-breathing. So, again, this is something that's kind of hard to pull up diagrams for the show, but I did pull up some of these things called the universal heartbeat, which is really, this vortex that we've seen a lot, right? I've shown this in the biological ionization. We've seen it a lot in the Russell drawings, and oftentimes I think even in our chat group, a lot of our members just talk about how the heart is really just a vortex, right? It is just a toroidal field, which is
It's not pumping.
It's not what we're being told. It's not what the scientific materialisms of the medical profession are saying. It doesn't, it can't. It doesn't have the ability to pump.
Well, it's logical.
blood.
They said it. It's the opposite.
So within this, this is how man gets recharged, right? Because what happens when your heart stops? You're dead, right? I mean, you basically, that's what they're going to check for. So this heartbeat, and I think actually Bear said it was it correlated to the universal pulse, right?
I think so.
And so we get recharged, right, by the food we eat and by his breathing and out breathing. We know that there are breatharians, right, that just, and I think even Bear says that that 85% of our nutrients come from the air, and that really only 15% of our nutrients come by eating, but it does replenish us with things that we don't get from the air if our air is unclean or depending on where we are. But your heartbeat is how we actually get recharged. And that's one thing that's kind of interesting, is that, the current situation that we're going through, some of the biggest conditions are that we begin to lose our breathing, right? We become congested, and then we begin to get heart palpitations, right? So a lot of this,
attacks too.
yeah, and we can see that these are the things that recharge us. So we're not really getting recharged, right? We're not concentrating on the things that recharge us.
So true.
And, it's even like, I think what's within German New Medicine or other things that I've read is that when people actually have heart attacks, it's because they're heartbroken more than they actually some physical condition of, cholesterol and all that. Those are all manifested because the heart begins to stop pumping, because it begins to wear down, because it's not in a condition where it's healthy, because you begin to not get charged. And so what happens is all this stuff starts to collect like a clogged sewer pipe. It's not functioning correctly. You're not pumping correctly. It's not because the food you're really eating, and it has something to do with it because you are putting some things that are stickier, but that's not really the cause. The cause is that we begin to lose our charge, and that toroidal field begins to dissipate. And as that toroidal field begins to dissipate, the ability for us to move the blood and the circulation and all these things through, and things begin to collect, just as in a sewer pipe that's not having enough water run through it. So as we begin to look at health as energy, as we talked about earlier, as we begin to look at the condition of heartbreak and of despair as causing our heart and affecting our respiration, right? We may begin to look at a different model of health.
Are you sure it's not because of jab anxiety? That's what the CDC is saying.
Well, again, anxiety would cause issues.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. It's like, it's not myocarditis. It's just jab anxiety.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're just unbelievable. Where do they come up with this
Well-
shit every day?
Well,
It's
you know,
mind-boggling.
they separate people from family. We can't see, whatever. So we become sad. The heart is taking a beating. Okay, I'm just going to say it. So it's not a. So anyway, I mean, yeah, for sure. I like that. I like that, the inbreeding and out. Inbreeding and outbreeding. I mean, I don't know. We take that for granted, I guess. Unless you're like on AV where people do the Wim Hof and all this. I mean, I'm just saying, like I used to do better breathing when I was doing Pilates and yogas. You know what I mean? I felt better.
Yeah, I'm a big Wim Hof advocate, right? I mean, I really believe that once you concentrate on the breath, it's a big issue because once you concentrate on the breath, and what I found is not only concentrate on the breath, but concentrate on how you breathe, like using the vagus nerve in the stomach.
Okay.
That as you breathe in, you actually push your stomach out as far as it can go.
Okay.
But as you breathe in, push your stomach and your belly button out as far as it can go.
Okay.
And then when you breathe out, you take it all and you try to take your belly button back to your spine.
Oh, good to know.
Okay? Because you're working that vagus nerve also.
Okay? Oh, I didn't know that.
And what happens for a lot of people as they get older is they stop working those muscles.
Definitely. I'm noticing that I'm not doing much down there, like in terms of that. So, wow.
And so as those muscles, deteriorate, you're going to have a much harder time breathing. And then you move your breath up into your shoulders and into your throat.
Yeah.
And that is when you really begin to lose your ability to breathe.
Oh.
Because the largest muscles you have are in your core.
Okay.
So as you breathe, really concentrate. And this is what is done. I mean, Troy Casey talks about this a lot with Kundalini and stuff. That's where it's all generated from that stomach muscle moving back and forth. So as we do that, you will actually, but the thing that you'll first notice is that to actually do it correctly, you have to have an empty stomach.
Okay.
Because if you have a full stomach, you can't do it.
Okay.
So you're actually eating less, right? And then doing this exercise. So the more mass you have in your midsection, the more food you have in your midsection, the harder it is to practice these type of breathing techniques.
Especially the amount of hours per day that people eat, instead of eating, like, I think 6 hours is supposed to, at the most 6 hours for all of the food that you eat in a day. But they breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then you have a snack. It's basically a prescription for death.
This is useful because as we're going to, I guess, experience some, less things on the shelf, whatever, maybe we'll have some hard times. It's like Dr. Lando said, we could learn to have, less meal a day, you know what I mean? And be still able to function okay. We just have to do these things, apply some of this stuff, right?
It was funny because, one thing is that everyone's crying about how much obesity there is, and that's the number one cause of health concerns in the United States. And then they're saying, well, we're gonna have less things on the shelf. You have to eat less, and everyone's crying about that, right? So it's like
Unbelievable.
you're given part of the solution is that just learn how to eat less, right? And then so it doesn't matter. We're dying from obesity, but they're worried that we're not going to have enough. You know, so it's just
Unbelievable.
we're constantly in this state of fear, no matter what happens.
Well, I never understood the whole psyop about starvation and shit. You know, that's all bullshit. I think it's all
Well, not
manufactured.
now.
But I wanted to add something to your Wim Hof comment. Because of I'm taking voice lessons, and my teacher is really obsessed with breath. In fact, breathe, like, I don't know if any of you guys are mouth breathers. But supposedly, well, breathing through your nose is like far superior than breathing through your mouth. And what she has me do is I duct tape my mouth shut at night to force myself not to breathe.
You can
like
wear
snore.
a band. You can wear a band around your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, instead of duct tape, I mean.
Well, it's not duct tape. It's like mouth tape.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they make a band that you can wear also. Just keep your mouth. I mean, there's no question that mouth breathing leads to dumber people, I think. Didn't we talk about this here?
No, actually, that's where the term I think idiot came from, or stupid came from. It came
lower
from,
IQ.
yeah, lower IQ was from a mouth breather.
Yeah.
And
I think Bear spoke about it. I think Bear discussed it at one of the shows, maybe a month ago or something.
But again, that's where you see the deterioration of the body. So as you move from the diaphragm and breathing up to the chest, up to the mouth, you are reducing your ability to breathe. Because each of these muscles.
Except I'm wondering, okay. I understand what you're saying, but I did a biotuning session. First time in my life. And with the process that she made us do, we had to breathe out from the mouth. To do this releasing, whatever it was that she was doing with us, bringing back those elements back in, back out at the end. I mean, all I'm saying is I've never breathed so much from my mouth in my life.
But blowing out only.
What we had to do. But that was only for a specific time period, like just for what we were doing for this particular healing method or whatever you want to call it.
But you could not keep that up for a long time.
No. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying I think it's got its use depending what you're doing.
Yes, and even within the Wim Hof, he doesn't care if you breathe through your nose or through your mouth. It's just about a matter of getting the air in and out.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I saw. I mean,
and for quantity, the mouth is better than the nose. Okay, just think about it. You look at how your size of your nostril, look at the size of your mouth, right? You're going to get more quantity, but the absorption of the air, this is like if you do any long distance running or you want to keep breathing through your nose, because once you stop breathing through your nose, your efficiency is less, even though you feel like you're getting more.
It creates nitric oxide as well through your nose.
Yeah, and so there are different. It's not that the breathing through your nose is bad. It's not a good condition to have as your normal condition.
Exactly.
I thought you said exhale though, just now. No, Giselle?
We were
exhale through your mouth.
We were exhaling from the mouth.
Yeah,
that doesn't matter. It's the inhale that counts.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I was just saying, I got to the point at the end, like my throat was hurting because I had never done this before, but I felt great once I came out of it because, there was some energy stuck in the spine. There was different things that even a crack in the neck, and there was only 4 of us, but she could see in her. She said somebody's neck is stuck, somebody's spine is here. Anyway, I was just saying, it was an experience. Let me put it this way.
And during Earth Music and Sky, we actually had somebody that came in and did like the Kundalini breathing, where you can actually generate the DMT.
Okay.
Through the mouth breathing, through that very heavy mouth breathing.
Okay.
Yeah. And he does that too, right? What's his name?
I don't know.
The guy you were just talking about.
Troy
Wim
Casey.
Hof.
Troy?
Yeah. Troy does
Wim
it.
Hof.
Yeah, Wim Hof. But you can create the DMT just like ayahuasca through the breath work.
You know,
I
like
do.
a huffing he has
Yeah.
you doing, like for
Yeah.
like ridiculously until you like pass out almost.
Yeah, exactly. So
But
yeah,
I
so
think what you said at the beginning about losing those muscles at the
in the diaphragm.
the diaphragm and all that, I got to think about that, because I mean, when I was doing Pilates, it was all about breathing down there. Okay, we never breathe from up here. Always, and I mean, I was a lot younger for one thing, but God, it was amazing. After you came out of there, you seem to be breathing so much better. That kind of thing.
Well, Grant, isn't your voice coach telling you to sing from the diaphragm too? That's where it all comes from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's like no pressure here. It's all from below.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to go take voice lesson.
Grant takes them.
Yeah, I can recommend you a really good teacher.
Well, yeah.
She's like an angel.
You mean you do it online?
She does remote lessons. I do it in person, but
okay.
But she's really good. I kind of have a crush on her.
I think about that.
Don't forget this is being recorded, Grant.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
All right, let's go. So with this, I actually put up this chart, which is Russell's, circle of the elements, right? Where he has the female and the male and all the different gases, and then they're broken up into the quadrants of male, female, right, and so on.
I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good. Look at that. Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. So within this, again, these are all the things that make up man, right? So the food that we eat contains these other elements. So that's the chemical process, right? We actually get these elements from a chemical process, which is the food. But, is it chemical, or is there actually an energy component in that also, right? Where we're absorbing the energy components, because the chemical process is very slow. But so we have the food, we have the breathing, and then we have the heart. So these are things that if you ever feel that your heart is, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not gonna say don't take medicine, but you may want to try also to just concentrate on healthy thoughts for your heart, for love. Concentrate on those kind of things. If you are feeling that you're having some type of condition, breathe, concentrate on your breathing, and then concentrate on your mental condition and see if that may affect your heartbeat and rate, rather than just reach for something, nitroglycerin or something like that. But again, I'm not a doctor, so whatever you think's best, but it's just a theory I'm saying. Okay. What is the difference between a sex condition and an electric condition? From page 120, none. They are identical. And why are they identical? Because to have a sex condition, we need two poles. We need a positive and negative, which is the same thing we need for an electrical condition, correct? So in this, we have father, mother, right? Father, mother, positive, right? Illustrating the father-mother principle of building bodies by dividing light into polarized units and reproducing bodies by uniting two oppositely projected units into one by centripetal compression. Polarity and sex are one. Sex and electric potential are one. Okay, so any questions on what is the difference between these two conditions? I mean, we've covered it quite a bit. He's been pretty thorough in repetition here. So let's go on to the next question. By what is all the work of the universe performed? From page 121, it is performed as a result of that desire. Remember we talked about desire last week, in unbalanced matter to seek rest in a balanced condition. If there was no desire to seek a balanced condition, there would be no work performed. Now, I don't know if this means if we become apathetic to a balanced condition, if we decide that we are okay with unbalanced conditions and chaos, if work gets formed, but there is something to do with that desire, right? An unbalanced matter to seek rest in balanced conditions. So as we look at this, right, I mean, we see, electricity in nature's sex force, right? Positive, negative, right? This is, and then we have the positive charge, positive. So this is really what we see in God's magnetic light, and this is man's magnet. In man's cosmology, these are magnetic lines of force. There are no magnetic lines of force in nature. All motion is either for sex division or sex union. Gravitation unites, radiation divides. So what he's showing here is the difference between what man's thought of magnetism in the thinking mind and what God's thought of magnets are and how they work with a zero polarity in the middle. So in God's cosmology, these are the electric dividers of stillness into curved planes of equal potential electric pressure. Any comments on this slide? We've seen it before. But again, within this, they're not showing the zero in the center. See, within this electricity, within this, they're showing the 0 point in here, which we talked about. Okay, so question number 11. What is reflected in the dual electric desire to give for regiving and to unfold for refolding? From page 121, the desire for two-way motion is equal action and reaction. So in this, we see the law, right? Positive electricity is force generated again against pressure resistance. Positive intensity increase with the contraction due to pressure resistance in streams flowing in opposite directions. Right? The negative electric force, same thing, right? We have inhalation, we have exhalation. Exhalation is the negative. This is the death cycle of the wave. Inhalation is the life cycle of the wave. This is called the cosmic pendulum. Inhalation, exhalation. This is the breath of the universe. All things have this. This is how the universe functions. Inhalation, exhalation. From this desire of two-way motion and equal action and reaction. So what is desire? I pulled this out of one of the first we did. Desire is not in the brain. It is a centering conscious self. Desire is the cause of all motion. That was from part 1, chapter 5, page 57. So I brought that back because we're talking a lot about desire. It is not in the brain. Okay? It is in the centering conscious self. So that's question 11, and that's the last of the questions.
Wow.
Any comments on what we just studied and talked about?
Well, lots covered today, boy.
Okay, let me go ahead. I'm going to stop recording and we can wrap up, okay?